You do not have a society with 607 billionaires, fully 200 more billionaires than there were in 2010, without having crushing poverty. There are 38 million people living in poverty in the US because there are 600 billionaires. They are wealthy because of low wages. They are wealthy because of the absence of sick days. They are wealthy because of homelessness. They are wealthy because of foreclosures. They are wealthy because of evictions. Then some of them will become wealthy and even wealthier because of coronavirus. It is important to name the problem because there are those who will tell us that markets can work, that we can fundamentally fix the problems in US society without radical change. But there has never been a single moment in the history of this country where capitalism has not created enormous misery and oppression for tens of millions of ordinary people. This was a country founded on the genocide of its native population that relied on enslaved labor, working that land to generate enormous, unprecedented wealth, that then relied upon the exploitation of successive waves of migrant labor to multiply that wealth a million times over. And even in the so-called golden age of US capitalism in the 1940s and the 1950s, it came with the exclusion of Black workers and women. The exclusion of Black workers was so extreme that in the midst of the longest economic boom in US history, Black workers across the South rose up to crush Jim Crow segregation. And from the middle 1960s until the end of that decade, more than 500,000 African Americans engaged in urban uprisings to demand access to the riches of American society. In fact, there has been no golden age of American capitalism. It has been an unbroken cycle of extraction, poverty, racism, sexism, oppression, exploitation, and struggle. Part of the mythology of American exceptionalism and the idea that this is the most just place on earth is the accompanying idea that it is a society that is inherently progressive, always improving and moving forward. In reality, the only forward movement has come through struggle. Naomi, as she talked about, has written about shock and how the political class has used social catastrophes to create policies that allow for private plunder. She calls it disaster capitalism or the shock doctrine. But she has also written that in these moments that create opportunity for the forces of reaction, there are also opportunities for ordinary people to transform these conditions in ways that benefit the mass of humanity. The scale of the coronavirus crisis is so profound that there is also now an opportunity to remake our society for the greater good while rejecting the pernicious individualism that has left us utterly ill-equipped for the moment. The class-driven hierarchy of our society will encourage the spread of this vicious virus unless dramatic and previously unthinkable solutions are immediately put on the table. As Bernie Sanders has counseled, we must think in unprecedented ways. This includes universal health care, an indefinite moratorium on evictions and foreclosures, the cancellation of student loan debt, a universal basic income, and the reversal of all cuts to food stamps. These are the most basic measures that can staunch the immediate crisis of deprivation caused because of the millions of layoffs and the millions more to come. But emergency stopgaps also show what is possible. If moratoriums on evictions and foreclosures are possible in the midst of a crisis, why can't they be possible in so-called normal times? If it's possible to put pause, why is that not a possibility in so-called normal times? If it's possible to release people from prison, to decarcerate in times of crisis, why is that not possible in normal times? The Sanders campaign was an entry point into this discussion most recently. It is shown public appetite and even desire for vast spending, and these desires do not translate into votes because they seem a risky endeavor when the consequence is 4 more years of Donald Trump. But the mushrooming crisis of the coronavirus is changing the calculus. As federal officials announce this new $1 trillion aid package, we can never go back to banal discussions of how will we pay for it. How can we not? Now is a moment to remake our society anew. That's it.